Phil Savage, once a draft consultant, would have never forecast this. Shedeur Sanders launching quarterback tech co-signed by NFL legends 2 days after getting cut. Not hype gear. Not influencer junk. Real, data-driven, wearable tech backed by Hall of Famers, and built entirely outside the NFL's R&D ecosystem. In a league still obsessed with pro days and Wonderlicks, Sanders rewired performance validation.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The Browns assumed they'd walked away from a backup quarterback. Instead, they walked straight into obsolescence. This wasn't a pivot. It was a controlled demolition of the belief that value must be assigned from above. Sanders dismantled the league's monopoly on platform, legitimacy, and narrative, then rebuilt the entire concept of athlete influence on his own terms. What looks like independence is actually sovereignty, from the Hall of Fame validated quarterback tech to the grant-matching pipeline for underfunded schools. Every arm of his operation proves that relevance is now a matter of execution, not endorsement. This wasn't the Browns losing a player. This was the league losing its script. The Cleveland Browns waived Shedeur Sanders. That was the whole move. A decision they likely didn't think twice about. Roster spots are competitive and cuts happen. But within 48 hours, that single mechanical front office decision triggered one of the most disruptive shifts in modern professional sports. Because Shedeur didn't respond like a discarded player. He responded like an architect. Not with a training montage or a prove them wrong post. He rolled out a $14 million multi-pronged enterprise. Fully autonomous. Entirely athlete-led. Functioning completely outside of NFL infrastructure. The Browns expected silence. What they got was a high-speed masterclass in platform sovereignty, cultural leverage, and systemic critique, executed faster than most franchises finalize a press release. Let's be absolutely clear, this wasn't a bounce back. This was a power move. The rollout included a documentary series that puts full narrative control in Shedeur's hands. No filtered media day quotes, no team-run production, no network gatekeeping. Just story ownership, editorial control, cultural framing. And in a league where storytelling is big business, that alone flipped the balance of power. Because now the story of being waived isn't a PR problem, it's a content asset. And instead of waiting to be featured in a league-produced undrafted segment, Shedeur controls every angle. That's narrative sovereignty, and it's something the league can't touch. Then there's the Youth Football Development Initiative. Unlike the NFL's top-down branding-first community outreach efforts, Shedeur's program targets underserved communities with real, self-funded infrastructure. It's not performative. It doesn't rely on media coverage. And it doesn't require the league's name to validate it. It builds where the NFL has failed to. It provides where the league has ignored. It replaces performative outreach with scalable, independent development. No permission needed. And that's just one piece. The grant matching foundation adds another layer. Shedeur redirected private capital directly into athletic departments that don't have corporate sponsors or booster funds. No waiting on university donors. No navigating outdated approval pipelines. Just targeted injection of resources where they're most needed. This isn't charity as marketing. It's redistribution. It doesn't play by the old nonprofit model where visibility matters more than impact. It's about getting liquidity to programs the system has historically overlooked, and doing it efficiently without middlemen. What Shedeur launched wasn't just generous. It was surgical. It showed that athlete-led finance can restructure institutions. And it showed that athletes don't need to wait for big-name brands to validate their giving. And while all of that would have been enough to get attention, Shedeur took it one step further, into technology. Specifically, performance analytics. His quarterback tech platform, co-signed by NFL legends, isn't influencer fluff. It's wearable, data-driven performance science. It tracks, measures, and improves quarterback mechanics at a level that doesn't just mimic team systems. It challenges them. With Hall of Fame veterans endorsing the product, it brings credibility that can't be brushed off as marketing hype. This wasn't an athlete slapping his name on a product. It was a quarterback building a platform that could eventually replace the very tools franchises use to evaluate and develop players. And that's a threat. Because if athletes can own their training data, monetize their performance tools, and scale them independently, what role does the league really play in development? Shedeur didn't just opt out of the NFL system. He replaced key components of it. So what do you call a player who owns his narrative, redirects funding, builds a youth talent pipeline, and launches validated sports tech? All in less than 48 hours? Not a reject. A prototype. That's how the transcript framed it. And they're right. Because Shedeur isn't just a former prospect. He's a blueprint for how modern athletes will move, strategically, independently, and without institutional handholding. His post-waiver response reframed the entire idea of athletic value. Not as something granted by the draft. Not as something proven through compliance. But as something built. Through vision. Through execution. Through vertical integration. And that, more than anything, is what exposes the NFL's blind spot. They evaluated Shedeur with 20th century tools. Film. Measurables. System fit. And they missed everything that wasn't scoutable. Narrative leverage. Execution speed. Ecosystem coherence. Cultural fluency. That wasn't a tactical failure. It was epistemological. The Browns didn't just get a cut wrong. They failed to recognize that they were evaluating the wrong qualities entirely. Shedeur's platform reached more people, created more impact, and sparked more industry conversation than most quarterbacks on active rosters. And he didn't play a single down. Visibility? He didn't wait for it. He created it. That's the new power model. Visibility isn't awarded. It's claimed. Not through compliance but through execution. And that terrifies the system. Because it shows that the league's control over narrative, access, and relevance is crumbling. If players can operate with this level of independence, what's left for the team to offer besides a paycheck and a helmet? Shedeur didn't act out of spite. He acted with clarity. He didn't ask for redemption. He enacted reclamation, of control, of narrative, of authority. And now, he's forced the league to confront its own fragility. Because this wasn't just one player taking a creative approach to being cut. This was a full-scale indictment of how the system views talent, measures potential, and fails to evolve with the very athletes it claims to elevate. And the ripple effect is real. Pre-draft conversations are changing. Athletes now enter the pipeline negotiating documentary rights. They bring business acumen, not just tape. They talk equity, not just exposure. They're no longer asking, what team wants me? But what alignment serves what I've already built? That's not a mindset shift. It's a structural one. And the system is late to the realization. Because now, franchises have to deal with the fact that they're not scouting players anymore, they're courting sovereign platforms. Athletes with their own infrastructure, their own reach, their own logic of value. And unless teams adapt to that shift, they're going to keep losing, not just games but influence. Because Shedeur didn't need to stay on a roster to stay relevant. He redefined relevance itself. Like this if you're watching the game change in real time. Comment if you think this is the future for athletes everywhere. And subscribe, because when jersey numbers stop being the only path to power, the real plays are happening off the field. And here's the part nobody in the NFL wants to admit. What Shedeur Sanders did wasn't just a personal pivot. It was a full-blown institutional reckoning. In 48 hours, he pulled off something that shattered every lazy assumption baked into the modern sports machine. That athletes are interchangeable. That power comes from proximity to the league. That your value depends on who drafts you. All of that, wiped out in 2 days. The Browns waived Shedeur and thought they were moving on. Instead, they opened a case study in the exact kind of leadership, innovation, and cultural velocity their organization lacks. They didn't just cut a player. They became the backdrop to a story that made them look like the ones getting left behind. Because here's the truth, Shedeur didn't go quiet. He didn't go rogue. He went responsible. He built something not out of desperation but direction. No post-cut scrambling. No prove-them-wrong theatrics. Just vision, executed. The NFL is a machine powered by uniformity. Follow the rules. Stay in your lane. Build a brand but not too loud. Speak up, but only on certain topics. Be grateful for the platform. Wait your turn. And then here comes Shedeur, who didn't just ignore that script. He published a better one. A vertically integrated empire, media, tech, development, philanthropy, launched overnight and bypassing every layer of traditional sports gatekeeping. That $14 million figure? That's not flex money. That's infrastructure capital. That's ecosystem building cash. That's seed funding for a platform designed to outlast the next contract, the next media cycle, the next franchise failure. That's what's so radical about all of this, permanence. Shedeur didn't just make noise, he built something that lasts without the system. And permanence is exactly what the system fears. Because permanence doesn't need to be drafted. It doesn't need a practice squad deal. It doesn't fade when the cameras leave. It grows. And Shedeur didn't just grow his relevance, he grew the whole definition of relevance. Past the field. past the scoreboard, into community, legacy, ownership. Ownership. That's the word the league avoids like the plague. Because for so long, they've depended on athletes playing the role of employee. Let the league handle visibility. Let the team own the story. Let the sponsors decide who gets to matter. But Shedeur said no. No to agent mediation. No to league-sponsored branding. No to franchise-filtered philanthropy. He didn't ask for a spotlight. He installed his own. Take his documentary series. That wasn't just about telling his side of the story, it was a clear rebuke to the idea that league-produced content gets to shape the narrative. Shedeur didn't wait to be invited onto a platform. He built one. And in doing so, he removed the NFL's ability to curate, control, or capitalize on his journey. That's leverage the league can't touch. Same with his youth football initiative. The NFL has made entire campaigns around community outreach, but Shedeur exposed what those campaigns often lack: depth, longevity, actual infrastructure. His approach doesn't rely on photo ops or corporate logos. It's direct, self-funded, and designed to scale. Not for clout. For change. That's how you flip the model. Not by fighting the league, but by showing that you don't need them to lead. And then there's the grant matching foundation. That move hit a nerve. Because it wasn't performative giving. It was surgical redistribution. Shedeur targeted programs in high schools and colleges that the corporate ecosystem refuses to fund. Not because they aren't valuable, but because they aren't visible. Now, thanks to him, they're both. And that's where the disruption becomes systemic. Because the NFL has built a pipeline that filters out anyone not already plugged into exposure-heavy ecosystems. Shedeur didn't critique that pipeline, he replaced it. With real money. No middlemen. No bureaucracy. And on top of all of it, the wearable QB analytics tech. Endorsed by NFL Hall of Famers, built for performance, backed by data. This wasn't a gadget. It was a weapon. A tool that gives quarterbacks control over their own growth. A product that doesn't require a team facility or a coaching staff to unlock development. That's dangerous to a system that prides itself on gatekeeping performance insights. If players can track their own metrics, design their own growth plans, and refine their own skill sets, without league oversight, what's left for the team to own? Because Shedeur didn't just build around the NFL. He built without it, and better. And now the floodgates are open. Athletes are watching. Young prospects are already reshaping their pre-draft strategy around ownership, visibility, and ecosystem independence. Agents are scrambling to stay relevant. Sponsors are pivoting toward authenticity and execution instead of safe, team-approved narratives. The league doesn't know how to respond, because it's never had to compete with players for attention, trust, and value. Shedeur flipped the balance. The league used to be the sun. Now it's just another orbit around a bigger system of athlete-owned gravity. And make no mistake, this moment won't be undone. Because Shedeur didn't just prove athletes can thrive outside the system. He proved the system's grip was never that strong to begin with. Its power came from illusion, visibility as a gift, influence as a reward. But he showed what Gen Z athletes already know. Platform ownership precedes jersey ownership. And legacy? Legacy is engineered. That's what the Browns missed. They thought they were releasing a quarterback. They were actually forfeiting the chance to be part of a new model. One that forces teams to scout differently, invest differently, think differently. They didn't just make a roster mistake. They exposed a franchise-level blind spot. And now they get to watch a player they let go dominate the media, reshape athlete philanthropy, innovate in performance tech, and train the next generation of talent, all without stepping back into a single huddle. That's not redemption. That's reclamation. So where do we go from here? Simple. The athletes build. The league reacts. And slowly the old scaffolding gives way to a new kind of architecture. One where platform, purpose, and power aren't negotiated. They're owned. And here's what nobody's saying out loud, but everybody in the building knows it. The Browns didn't just wave Shedeur Sanders. They wavingly endorsed their own irrelevance. The moment that roster cut hit the wire, they unknowingly submitted themselves to a real-time case study in institutional obsolescence. And Shedeur? He didn't just walk away clean. He walked into legacy mode, without needing the league, a jersey, or a single snap. This was never about football alone. That was their first mistake, treating Shedeur like a position to fill, a stat line to predict, a prospect to mold. They failed to see him for what he really was: a platform operator, a values-first brand architect, and a cultural signal that the old framework no longer applies. The NFL is built on institutional scaffolding, draft boards, combined metrics, coaching trees, depth charts. All structured, all linear, all controlled. But Shedeur's move didn't follow any of it. He went diagonally. He made visibility bend to him, not the other way around. And the speed, 48 hours. That's not reaction time. That's launch time. Most front offices need 48 hours to set up a press conference. Shedeur rolled out a $14 million vertically integrated ecosystem spanning media, tech, youth development, and philanthropy. No agents. No PR scaffolding. No institutional nods. Just execution. Pure, surgical, decisive execution. And it was a direct hit. Because now the Browns, along with every other franchise watching this unfold, have to grapple with something far bigger than a missed evaluation. They have to confront the reality that their entire approach to scouting, development, and control is being bypassed in real time. Not rejected. Not rebelled against. Just rendered irrelevant. Shedeur's model is what happens when you remove friction. When you don't wait for the system to tell you who you are. When you build every lever of relevance and power before the system even decides to acknowledge your value. He didn't come to be drafted. He came prepared. That documentary series? It's not just a content move. It's a sovereignty move. It's the removal of the league's ability to script his narrative. It denies the NFL the opportunity to frame his career as a journey back. There is no comeback arc because there was no fall. The waiver didn't close his story. It opened a new chapter, and this time he owns the IP. Every second of footage. Every frame. Every voiceover. That kind of ownership used to be unthinkable for athletes. Now, it's the new expectation. Why sell your story when you can license it? Why participate in someone else's edit when you can produce your own? The NFL didn't see this coming because it never imagined players could become full-scale media operators. But Shedeur just made the league's control over narrative feel outdated. And that control? That was the league's unspoken weapon. Gone. Let's go deeper. The Youth Football Development Initiative didn't just replace NFL-led outreach programs. It exposed them. The difference between visibility and impact has never been more stark. While the league rolls out branded cleats and Twitter campaigns during community weeks, Shedeur's building independent, self-sustaining development infrastructure in places the NFL never invested in long-term. He's not doing drive-by charity. He's building actual capacity. For kids who'll grow up knowing that their dreams don't require a combined invite, they just need access. And Shedeur is giving them that access, without waiting on a league grant or a marketing campaign. That kind of reach isn't temporary. It multiplies. It builds loyalty. It builds legacy. And what about the grant matching foundation? Let's really sit with what that means. He's redirecting capital, real money, fast money, to high school and college programs with zero institutional clout. No corporate logos. No ESPN coverage. No Power 5 status. Just overlooked athletes and underfunded departments that now have a direct funding pipeline. That's not just generosity. That's redistribution. And it doesn't require approval from any boardroom. It's structural. It's systemic. And it's threatening to every traditional hierarchy built on access and privilege. Because Shedeur didn't go through the chain of command, he became the chain of command. And he did it before the NFL could decide what he was worth. Then there's the tech. The wearable quarterback analytics platform, co-signed by NFL legends, doesn't just disrupt performance tracking. It decentralizes it. It says, you don't need to be in a facility to develop like a pro. You don't need a coaching staff to know your metrics. You don't need to be drafted to optimize. This is what terrifies the league. When development becomes democratized, the institution loses leverage. Because what happens when athletes train like pros before they even get a scouting report? What happens when that training is athlete-owned? When the data doesn't live in team servers, but on personal dashboards? It's performance independence. And Shedeur isn't just using it, he's selling it. Endorsed by legends, backed by science, and built with athlete input. The NFL has million-dollar R&D departments, but this QB just released something credible enough to match or exceed what's coming out of franchise headquarters. So now you've got an athlete who owns his narrative, funds his cause, trains his replacements, and sells his tools. No contract needed. No agent necessary. And no franchise involvement whatsoever. And somehow, teams still think this is about upside. The Browns didn't just whiff on a prospect. They misunderstood the moment. They looked at Shedeur and saw a player to evaluate. What they missed was a fully realized ecosystem in motion. They were evaluating with a ruler when they should have been analyzing the blueprints of a city. And now they're left in the dust, watching as a waived quarterback becomes the defining force of the offseason without lacing a cleat. This isn't evolution. It's inversion. Athletes used to wait for the call. Now they are the call. This moment changes how the game is played off the field. From this point forward, every athlete watching Shedeur's rollout will walk into negotiations differently. They won't just be pitching what they can do in a playbook, they'll be showing what they've already built outside of it. Athletes are entering with content plans, IP portfolios, equity terms, and philanthropic frameworks. If teams can't meet them there, they'll get left behind. And they should. Because this moment is the line. The before and after. Before Shedeur, player independence was theory. Now it's operational. It's profitable. It's scalable. And it's already happening. You want to talk legacy? Legacy is creating a model so solid it becomes impossible to ignore, even for the institutions that tried to minimize you. Legacy is proving that rejection isn't a roadblock, it's a redirection. And Shedeur Sanders just gave every future athlete the coordinates to navigate around the system that told them to wait. Like this if you're watching sports power dynamics collapse in real time. Comment if you think teams can keep up with this new breed of athlete architects. And subscribe, because Shedeur didn't just change the conversation. He changed the game. And we're not going back.